Okay, let's get to AJ Preller. And with all the ownership issues right now, AJ has been very quiet. Yeah, he talked at FanFest and he talked about how they'd like to add maybe a couple of bats. And I'm going to talk about those bats here in a minute. And he'd like to add an arm. And I don't know how he's going to get an arm without paying some money. And there's really not a whole lot out there right now. And I think every day that goes by, it probably gets a little bit cheaper for the ball clubs. But I was looking at some of the free agent guys that are still out there, and I brought this guy's name up a while ago, and that's Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo, I think, would be a great fit here. Now I know you've got Luis Ariz, but we know that Rizzo had a bunch of injuries last year. He has had a back problem. He had two broken fingers last year that he tried to play with. I had a bad year with the Yankees, but he's a gamer and he's a great team guy, great on base guy. I mean, if it's 1-2 or 0-2, he'll just stick his elbow out there and get hit by the ball and go down to first base. Anthony doesn't have the power that he had, a few years back, but he's a winning ball player for me. And if the Padres could bring him in at a fairly cheap price, because I don't know who else is going to sign him right now, I'd go get Anthony Rizzo, let him play first, let Arise be the designated hitter. That's what I would do. Now, some of the other guys that are out there, you got Mark Canha, who's been a pretty good major league player. And he got a little bit of pop, but he knows how to play. Another guy that really knows how to play the game. He can play left field. He can play first base. He could DH. I mean, Mark Canha is a nice ball player, and he can help any ball club. And I think he's got to be on the radar because he's still out there. Now, there's a lot of things on the internet right now that the Padres are going to sign Jason Hayward. I wouldn't mind that. Jason Hayward's a good outfielder, and he'll run into one occasionally. A left-hand bat, good guy, good team guy, been on winning ball clubs. How do you feel about Jason Hayward? Would you like to see him bring him in? Now, the other guy that's out there, and there are a couple of other guys. David Peralta's still out there, and I watched some tape the other day of Peralta swinging the bat in the cage. Looked really good. Guy's going to be 38 years of age. But he did a nice job for the Padres. Hit 263, drove in some runs, hit a few home runs, played, relatively nice outfield when he was given that opportunity. David Peralta, I think, is a winning ball player. And then the other guy, and I don't know if this guy really fits in San Diego, and that's JD Martinez. I would have liked to have got him last year. They weren't able to get him. He ended up, signing late with the Mets, and his numbers were okay, but they weren't like they were the year before with the Dodgers when he drove in 100 runs. And JD Martinez pretty much one-dimensional now. He's a DH, not going to play the outfield any longer. And that wouldn't be a bad guy, but if you realize Arrive's going to have to be your primary first baseman. So tell me, of those guys, who would you like to sign? I mean, Anthony Rizzo, Mark Canha, Jason Hayward, David Peralta, or a JD Martinez. Joshua, I think that's a great call. I thought when he got let go and his contract was not picked up by Colorado, I thought the Padres would have already signed him. Josh, that's a great call. I think Cal Quantrill would be a decent pick. I couldn't agree with you more. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they sign him from the simple standpoint. AJ Preller drafted him when he was coming out of Stanford after Tommy John surgery. And one thing we know about AJ Preller, he's very loyal to players that played for him prior in San Diego or in Texas. He has an affinity. He grows close to the players, and sometimes that's probably not good. But I also think AJ knows the wherewithal of when he should reach out and get a guy or not get a guy. But he's been pretty good about bringing guys back that he thinks can help the ball club. And Joshua, I think that call on Cal Quantrill, I'll rubber stamp that one. Cal Quantrill, when he was here the first time, I thought he got better, but I wasn't a huge fan of his. But what I saw him do with Cleveland convinced me. He just needed to get into a rotation, get an opportunity to be out there in a consistent basis, in a routine, being a starting pitcher. That would really add to the staff. You got Cal Quantrill, absolutely 100%. Free agent bats, as I mentioned, we'll see what they do. But I mean, those guys that I mentioned, they're older ball players. I mean, you're not going to get a 25 or 26-year-old guy to come in here and roam left field unless you make a trade. But all those guys would help the ball club. I mean, Padres need to figure out what they're doing with the bench as well. You know, everybody always joked about, I mean, coach always talks about veterans on the bench. Well, how about those veterans on the bench last year? They got the job done. Peralta, Donovan Solano, who's now in Seattle. Those guys flat out got the job done. You got to have those guys on the bench. It's so hard to bring a young kid up like the Padres did for many, many years over numerous ownerships. They bring guys up. They don't play them every day. Guys that are used to being played every day, they come up and they get cold, and then they got to go in the 8th or 9th inning and pinch hit against a top-notch closer when they haven't even really established themselves as a major league player. I mean, you talk about setting guys up for failure. That's why you got to have veterans, guys that have been there, done that. And the moment is not too big. And all these guys that I mentioned, I think, fit in that they're not going to be intimidated. You got to have guys that are going to grind, and they're going to be with you through the thick and thin. Okay, now, here's the question I got for you. Oh, man, I told Jonathan before that I'm all fired up today. I'm really fired up today because it's baseball season. This is my time of year, and it should be your time of year. We got a damn good ball club here in San Diego.